Millionaire catches cook singing to his mother with Alzheimer's and can't hold back tears. Michael Anderson was coming home early that day. His business had taken so much of his time in recent months that he barely got to see his mother, Margaret, 78. The doctor had been clear about the diagnosis: advanced Alzheimer's. She no longer recognized him. That's when he heard a voice coming from the living room, a woman's voice, powerful and melodious, singing an old song he hadn't heard in decades. Michael stopped in the doorway, still unnoticed, and saw a scene that completely paralyzed him. Dorothy, the cook who had been working in the house for only 6 months, was standing next to his mother. Mrs. Margaret was smiling in a way Michael hadn't seen her smile in a long time, clapping to the rhythm of the music and gently swaying her head. Her eyes, usually empty and distant, were shining in a way he had forgotten. "How beautiful, my son, how beautiful," murmured Mrs. Margaret to Dorothy, as if speaking to someone dear from her youth. Michael's voice came out hoarser than he intended. "What's going on here?" Dorothy turned quickly, the smile disappearing from her face. Mrs. Margaret looked in the direction of the sound, but Michael saw how the sparkle in her eyes gradually faded. "I'm sorry, Mr. Michael, I was just—" "Don't stop," he said, surprising himself. "Please, keep singing." Dorothy hesitated for a moment, but when she saw Mrs. Margaret begin to get agitated, she started singing softly again. The transformation was immediate. The lady began to smile again, reaching out her hands to the cook. Michael approached slowly, trying to process what he was seeing. His mother, who for the past 6 months hadn't responded to anything or anyone, was reacting to this woman as if she were an old friend. "How did you find out she likes this song?" he asked when the song ended. Well, sir." Dorothy seemed nervous. "One day while I was preparing lunch, I started humming. The lady appeared in the kitchen and just stared at me. Since then, whenever I can, I sing a little for her." "How long has this been going on?" "About 3 months, more or less." Michael felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief to know that his mother still had moments of lucidity, anger for not having been told. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Dorothy lowered her eyes. "You're always so busy, and, well, I thought it was just a coincidence. I didn't want to bother." At that moment, Mrs. Margaret held Dorothy's hand and said clearly, "Thank you, Kathy." Michael stopped breathing. Kathy was the name of his younger sister, who had passed away as a child more than 50 years ago. His mother had never uttered that name again. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. In the following days, Michael started coming home earlier. He always found Dorothy singing softly to his mother, whether in the living room, the garden, or even while helping her with meals. Mrs. Margaret responded in different ways. Sometimes she hummed along, other times she just smiled or clapped. One afternoon, Michael decided to talk more seriously with Dorothy. He found her in the kitchen, preparing Mrs. Margaret's dinner, always the same vegetable soup that the lady could swallow without difficulty. "Dorothy, I need to better understand what's happening with my mother." She stopped stirring the pot and turned to him. "Mr. Michael, can I be honest? Please. My grandmother also had this disease. She lived with us when I was a teenager. At first it was scary. She didn't recognize me. She would get agitated, confused. But one day my mother started singing an old song, one of those that used to play on the radio back in Grandma's day. It was like she traveled back in time." Michael sat on the kitchen stool, something he had never done before. "And did it work?" "For a while, yes. The music seemed to open a little door in her memory. It didn't cure anything, but it brought her back, even if only for a few minutes." "Why did you choose this profession? I mean, being a cook?" Dorothy smiled for the first time in that conversation. "It was also because of my grandma. She used to say that food made with love nourishes more than expensive food. When I cooked for her, even in the last years of the illness, I saw how she calmed down with the smell, with the affection. I learned that caring for people goes far beyond just preparing a dish." Michael was silent for a moment. Dorothy went back to stirring the soup. "Dorothy, I want to make a proposal." "Yes, sir?" In addition to your duties in the kitchen, I would like you to dedicate specific time to sing for my mother. I can increase your salary." "No need, Mr. Michael." "What do you mean?" "I don't sing for Mrs. Margaret for money. I sing because I see it does her good. If you turn it into work, it will lose its magic." Michael had never thought of it that way. In the business world, everything had a price, a negotiation. But here was a woman offering something genuine without expecting anything in return. "Then at least let me learn more about these songs. I want to understand what touches her memory so much." "You can come watch whenever you want. But you have to promise one thing." "What?" "You won't try to turn it into a performance. Mrs. Margaret can feel when something is forced. It has to be natural, from the heart." That night, Michael had a difficult conversation with Barbara, the housekeeper who had taken care of Mrs. Margaret for 15 years. "Barbara, did you know that Dorothy sings for my mother?" The 60-year-old woman sighed. "Of course I knew, Michael. How do you think Mrs. Margaret has been so calm these past few months? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you never asked. You're always coming home late, leaving early, on the phone solving work problems. When was the last time you sat by your mother's side and really stayed with her?" The question was like a punch in the stomach. "I work to maintain her standard of living, to pay for the best doctors." "Your mother doesn't need the best doctors right now, Michael. She needs affection, presence, someone who sees her as a person, not as a patient." The next day, Michael cancelled 2 important meetings. He came home at lunchtime and found Dorothy helping his mother eat. Mrs. Margaret was eating slowly, but she was eating, something that had been getting harder and harder. "Can I try to help?" he asked. Dorothy looked at him surprised but nodded. Michael took the spoon and tried to offer the soup to his mother. Mrs. Margaret turned her face away. "Try singing," suggested Dorothy. "A very soft song." Michael felt ridiculous, but began to hum a song he remembered from childhood. His out-of-tune voice had no effect. Mrs. Margaret continued to refuse the food. "Let me try again," said Dorothy, "but keep singing along with me." This time the 2 voices blended. Michael's uncertain and timid joined Dorothy's confident voice. To his surprise, Mrs. Margaret opened her mouth and accepted the food. "How?" "Music is about connection, Mr. Michael. Your mother is feeling that you are together in that moment. It's not about singing well or badly. It's about being present." That afternoon marked the beginning of a new routine. Michael began to participate in the music sessions with his mother. At first he felt uncomfortable, but little by little he realized how his presence made a difference. Dorothy knew an impressive repertoire of old songs. She explained that she learned many of them from her own grandmother. Others she discovered over the years while caring for older people. "Have you worked as a caregiver before?" "Not professionally. But here in the neighborhood, there was always some lady who needed company. My mother taught me that those who can help should help." "Where do you live, Dorothy?" "Near the station, Mr. Anderson, in a housing project." Robert knew the area. It was a working-class neighborhood, with simple houses and busy streets. He grew curious about the life of this woman who brought so much light into his home. During one of the musical afternoons, something extraordinary happened. Mrs. Margaret not only sang along but remembered a second verse that neither Robert nor Dorothy knew. Her voice, though fragile, carried deep emotion. "Mum, this song, where did you learn it?" Mrs. Margaret looked him directly in the eyes, something rare, and said, "Your father used to sing it to me when you were little, Robert." It was the first time in months that she had called him by name and shown recognition. Robert couldn't hold back his tears. Dorothy discreetly stepped away, giving space for the moment between mother and son. But Mrs. Margaret reached out toward her. "Don't go, my dear. You're part of our song now." That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He called his brother Robert, who lived in Washington, D.C. "Robert, I need to tell you something amazing that's happening with Mom." "Has she gotten worse?" The worry was immediate. "No, on the contrary. I found a way to reach her." He told him about Dorothy and the music sessions. Robert listened in silence. "Robert, that's fantastic. How long has it been since I've seen our mother smile? A long time. But Robert, I'm scared. Scared of what? What if this is only temporary? What if she goes back to being completely absent? Brother, you yourself said the doctor explained how this disease works. There's no going back, no cure. If you found a way to bring moments of joy to her, isn't that what matters? The conversation with Robert reassured him, but also made him reflect on his priorities. In recent years, he had focused so much on working and making money that he lost connection with the most important people. The following week, Robert made a decision that surprised everyone. He started working part-time. He spent afternoons at home, actively participating in his mother's care. "Mr. Anderson, are you sure about this?" asked Dorothy when he told her about the change. "I am. I spent a long time thinking I was taking care of her by paying for expensive medical care. Now I understand that caring means being present." Barbara, the housekeeper, watched everything with satisfaction. "Mrs. Margaret is calmer. Even her sleep has improved, it was true. Lately, Mrs. Margaret had developed a habit of waking up several times during the night, confused and agitated. With the new musical routine, she slept more peacefully." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. A month after the discovery, Robert faced his first big challenge. Dorothy didn't show up for work. He called the number she had left, but no one answered. Mrs. Margaret spent the day restless. She refused lunch, didn't want to get out of bed, and when evening came, she started crying non-stop. "Robert, she's asking for Dorothy," said Barbara. "Or rather, she's asking for the lady who sings." On the second day with no news, Robert took an action he had never taken before. He went to Dorothy's address. What he found shocked him. Dorothy lived in a small, simple house, but extremely clean and organized. A young woman of about 17, clearly her daughter by her facial features, answered the door. "Are you my mother's employer?" "Yes. We're worried. Is she okay?" The girl, who introduced herself as Emily, hesitated before answering. "She's in the hospital, sir. She fell ill the night before last." "What happened?" "The doctors said it was overwork and stress. She's been working so much, taking on extra jobs to pay for my technical course." Michael felt like a complete idiot. Dorothy had been working other jobs besides his house, and he didn't even know. "May I visit her?" "I think she'd be happy. She's at Mercy Hospital, room 204. On the way to the hospital, Michael reflected on how little he knew about the lives of the people who worked for him. Dorothy was just the cook in his mind, not a person with dreams, problems, and a family to care for. He found Dorothy awake, but visibly tired. She was startled to see him. "Mr. Anderson, what are you doing here?" "What are you—" "I came to see how you are. My mother has been asking about you. Is Mrs. Margaret all right?" "No, without you, she's become agitated again. She's not eating properly. Dorothy tried to get out of bed. I need to go back—" "No," Michael interrupted her. "You need to recover. I want to understand why you didn't tell me you were working other jobs." "Mr. Anderson, my pay at your house is good, but I have expenses. My daughter is in her last year of her nursing technician course. My nephew lives with us ever since he was left alone. The bills never stop." "How many jobs do you have?" "3. I work at your house in the morning, for a family in Beverly Hills in the afternoon, and twice a week I make dinners for a lady on the Upper East Side." Michael did the math in his head. Dorothy worked at least 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. "And you still find the energy to sing for my mother?" "Mr. Anderson, singing doesn't tire you. Singing feeds the soul." At that moment, Michael made a decision that would change everything. "Dorothy, I want to make you an offer. I want you to work only at my house. I will pay you enough so you won't need the other jobs." "Mr. Anderson, that is very generous, but—" "It's not generosity, it's a necessity. My mother needs you, and you need to take care of your health so you can take care of her." Dorothy began to cry. "Why are you doing this for me?" "Because you taught me something I had forgotten. That caring for people is about being present, about creating connections. You're not just my employee, Dorothy. You are part of our family." 3 days later, Dorothy returned to work. Michael had completely reorganized the household routine. Now Dorothy worked from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, with a 2-hour break for lunch and rest. Dorothy's return brought Mrs. Margaret back too. On the first day, when she heard the familiar voice humming in the kitchen, the lady got up from her armchair by herself and walked toward the sound. "You came back," she said, hugging Dorothy as she would a daughter. "I always come back, Mrs. Margaret. I always come back to sing with you." Michael watched the scene from the hallway, moved once again. His mother showed a connection with Dorothy that transcended the illness, age, and social differences. It was a pure human connection. That evening, he called Dorothy for a talk. "I want to ask you a personal question, may I?" "Of course, Mr. Anderson." "Did you always know you wanted to care for people?" Dorothy smiled. "Actually, no. When I was young, I wanted to be a singer." Michael was surprised. "A professional singer?" "I sang in bars, at weddings. I even recorded a few songs in a small studio. But when my sister got sick and left her young son, I had to make choices. Music didn't pay the bills." "Do you regret it?" "No. The music is still with me, it just changed places. Before I sang for audiences who wanted to have fun. Now I sing for people who need to remember who they are." "And your daughter? Does she like music too?" "Emily inherited my voice, but she's smarter than me." "You chose a profession that can help people and still have stability. You're going to be an excellent nurse." "I'd like to get to know her better, and your nephew too." "You would do that?" "Dorothy, you take care of my family. It's only fair that I know yours." The following weekend, Michael organized a special lunch. He invited Dorothy to bring her daughter and nephew. He also called Robert, who came from Washington, D.C., especially to meet the woman who was working miracles with Mrs. Margaret. Emily was an articulate and determined young woman of 17, with the same gentle eyes as her mother. The nephew, Tommy, was 12 years old and full of energy. "Aunt C always sings here at the house, Grandpa Michael?" asked Tommy, who had immediately adopted Michael as a father figure. "Always," replied Michael, smiling at the nickname the boy had given him. During lunch, Emily sang with her mother. Her voice was even more impressive than Dorothy's, in tune and powerful. Mrs. Margaret clapped and asked for an encore. Robert pulled Michael aside. "Brother, this family is special. The way they treat our mother, I know. Dorothy made me understand that family isn't just about blood. It's about who we choose to have around, who we choose to care for." After lunch, Michael had an idea that had been taking shape in his mind for weeks. "Dorothy, can I make you a different proposal?" "Yes, Mr. Michael. I want to create a project, a place where people like my mother can have access to the kind of care you provide. Music therapy, genuine affection, human connection." "Mr. Michael, that's beautiful, but I don't know anything about business. You understand people, I understand business. Together we can create something special." Emily approached the conversation. "Mom, is Mr. Michael talking about a place to treat people with Alzheimer's?" "Not treat, Emily. Care for. They're different things. I'd like to be part of it. When I graduate from nursing school, I want to work with the elderly." Michael smiled. 3 generations of caregivers forming right before his eyes. "Then let's do this together." In the following weeks, Michael immersed himself in the project with a passion he hadn't felt in years. He researched specialized care centers, studied music therapy, and spoke with doctors specialized in Alzheimer's. Dorothy continued her routine with Mrs. Margaret, but now also participated in the planning meetings. Her practical experience was essential to understanding what really worked. "Mr. Michael, the most important thing is the environment. It needs to be welcoming, like a home. People with this disease get frightened by places that are too medical, too white. What would the ideal environment be like? Like a big house with a garden, a kitchen where they can smell food being made with care. Background music always, but soft, warm colors, familiar objects." Michael wrote everything down. He began to visualize the project taking shape. During this time, something beautiful happened. Robert started coming more often from Washington, D.C., and during his visits, he participated in the music sessions. He had a deep voice that perfectly complemented the voices of Michael and Dorothy. "Mom is creating a musical family," commented Robert one day. "Look how she smiles when we all sing together." It was true. Mrs. Margaret was visibly more animated when there were more voices around her. She even tried to direct the choir, moving her hands like a conductor. Barbara, always observant, made a remark that stayed with Michael. "Mrs. Margaret spent her life taking care of you two. Now you're returning that care. It's a beautiful circle to see." 1 month after the project began, Michael faced his first real crisis. He came home and found Mrs. Margaret extremely agitated. Dorothy was by her side, visibly worried. "What happened?" "I don't know, Mr. Michael. She woke up from her nap like this, asking about people I've never heard her mention before. She's very confused." Mrs. Margaret was shouting names that Michael didn't recognize, saying nonsense phrases, and seemed not to recognize her own familiar surroundings. Michael tried to calm her down, but she pushed him away, scared. "She doesn't recognize me," he said, trying to hide his despair. Dorothy started singing, very softly. Mrs. Margaret stopped shouting, but remained agitated. The song that always worked wasn't having any effect. "I'm going to call the doctor," said Michael. "Wait, let me try something." Dorothy left the room and came back a few minutes later with an old photo album. Michael watched her sit down next to Mrs. Margaret and begin to show her the photos one by one, humming softly. "Here is little Michael," she said, pointing to a photo. "What a handsome boy." Mrs. Margaret looked at the photo, and her breathing began to calm down. "And here is Robert. Look how mischievous he was." Gradually, Mrs. Margaret began to reconnect with the images. When they got to a photo of her husband, she smiled for the first time that afternoon. "My George," she said, gently touching the photo. Michael approached. "Dorothy, where did you get these photos?" "Barbara showed me where they're kept. I thought they might help during the difficult moments." "How did you know this would work?" "With my grandmother. Sometimes the songs weren't enough, but family pictures always calmed her down. Visual memories are stored in a different part of the brain." That night, Michael researched the subject and discovered that Dorothy was right. Photographs and music stimulated different parts of the brain and could be used together to create stronger connections with memories. The crisis passed, but it left Michael with a sharper awareness of his mother's disease progression. He talked to Dorothy about it. "Mr. Michael, the disease will progress. There will be worse days and better days. The important thing is to enjoy the good days and have patience on the bad ones." "How do you stand to see this? Doesn't it make you sad?" "Of course it does. But I learned something important. We can't stop people from forgetting, but we can create new happy moments every day. Every smile from Mrs. Margaret is a small victory." This conversation transformed Michael's perspective. Instead of focusing on what his mother was losing, he began to value every small moment of connection. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 weeks later, Michael received a call he wasn't expecting. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice identified herself as Dr. Susan Johnson, a geriatrician from one of the city's main hospitals. "Mr. Michael, I heard through colleagues about the work being done with your mother. I would like to learn more about this music therapy project you have developed." Michael was surprised. He hadn't publicized Dorothy's work. "Dr. Susan, how did you hear about this?" Dr. William Peters, who follows some of my patients, commented on Mrs. Margaret's impressive progress. He was very interested in the unconventional methods you are using. "Would you like to come see our work?" "Very much. In fact, I have a proposal. We are organizing a seminar on alternative care for patients with Alzheimer's. Would you like to present your experience?" Michael looked at Dorothy, who had listened to the conversation. "Dorothy, what do you think?" "Mr. Michael, if this can help other families like ours, I think we should try." A week later, Michael and Dorothy were in an auditorium full of doctors, nurses, family members, and caregivers. Michael had never seen Dorothy so nervous. "Mr. Michael, I don't know if I can speak in front of so many people." "Dorothy, just tell your story. Tell them how you care for my mother." The presentation was moving. Michael spoke about the discovery, about how music transformed the family routine. But it was when Dorothy took the floor that the audience was truly moved. "I'm not a doctor or a nurse," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "I'm just a daughter who learned from my own pain how to care for someone losing their memory." Dorothy spoke about her grandmother, about how music was a bridge between the past and the present. She talked about the importance of treating each person as a unique human being, not just as a diagnosis. "Do you want to know the secret?" she said, speaking directly to the family members in the audience. "It's not about the music, it's about love. Music is just the means. What works is singing from the heart, hugging without fear, looking into their eyes, even when it seems like no one is looking back." When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. Michael saw tears in the eyes of many people in the audience. After the presentation, dozens of people came up to ask questions, share stories, ask for help. Michael realized they had touched on something much bigger than they had imagined. An elegant, well-dressed lady in her 70s approached Dorothy specifically. "My dear, my name is Evelyn. My husband has had Alzheimer's for 2 years. Could you teach me some of the songs you use?" Dorothy spent an hour talking with Mrs. Evelyn, writing down songs on a piece of paper, explaining simple approach techniques. Michael watched from afar, proud of the generosity of that extraordinary woman. On the way home, they talked about the experience. "How do you feel after today?" asked Michael. "Strange. I never thought my story could help so many people." "Dorothy, you have a gift, not just for singing, but for connecting people." "Mr. Michael, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Today, seeing all those lost families not knowing how to deal with the illness, I remembered how I felt when my grandmother was diagnosed, so alone, so without direction. And now I understand that God gave me this experience for a reason, to be able to help other people not feel so alone." That conversation planted a seed in Michael's mind. The project for the care center began to take on a different dimension. It wouldn't just be a place for treatment, but a support center for entire families. In the following weeks, Michael received dozens of calls, families asking for help, doctors interested in partnerships, even journalists wanting to tell the story. One of the most important calls came from a real estate businessman. "Mr. Michael, my name is Dr. Paul Henry. I saw your presentation and was very interested. I have a plot of land in the Beverly Hills neighborhood that I would like to donate to your project." Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Paul, that is very generous, but why would you do this? My wife had Alzheimer's. She spent her last 5 years without recognizing me. If we had known about your work back then, perhaps she would have had a better quality of life." The land donation accelerated all plans. Michael began working with architects to develop the center's project. Dorothy participated in all the meetings, always with practical and human suggestions. "The rooms can't all be the same," she said. "Each person needs to have their personal objects, their photographs. The environment needs to feel like home. And the kitchen. The kitchen is essential. The smell of home-cooked food awakens memories. People need to be able to participate in the preparation, even if it's just peeling potatoes. And the garden? A garden with flowers that have a strong scent. Roses, jasmine, rosemary. Scents are also memory triggers." Michael hired a company specialized in senior care projects, but insisted that every detail be approved by Dorothy. She had an unfailing instinct for understanding what would work in practice. During this planning period, something touching happened at home. Mrs. Margaret began participating more actively in conversations about the project. Obviously, she didn't understand all the details, but seemed to grasp the positive energy surrounding the subject. One day, she surprised everyone. "Michael, are you going to help other families like ours?" she asked, with a clarity she hadn't shown in months. "Yes, Mother. We're going to create a special place." "That's good, my son. Your father would be proud." It was a rare and precious moment of lucidity that Michael kept in his heart. 6 months after the project began, Michael faced a personal challenge. His company was going through financial difficulties, and he needed to make tough decisions about where to invest his resources. He spoke with Robert on the phone. "Brother, maybe it's better to wait for a more favorable time for the care center." Michael, are you sure about that? I'm not, Robert, but I need to be responsible. If my company goes bankrupt, I won't be able to take care of Mother either. Dorothy noticed Michael's concern and started a conversation with him. Mr. Michael, are you worried about something? Dorothy, can I be honest with you? You always can. I'm facing some financial difficulties. I might have to postpone the center project, and that's making you sad. Very. I feel like I'm failing all those families we met at the seminar. Dorothy became thoughtful for a moment. Mr. Michael, may I suggest something? What? What if we started smaller? Instead of a big center, how about starting right here at home? How do you mean? You have a big house with a garden, space to host some families. We could start with weekly meetings. I would teach the songs. You would share experiences. Michael had never thought of that. Would it be like a support group? Exactly. And when the financial situation improves, then we build the bigger center. The idea was simple and brilliant. Michael spoke with Robert, who fully supported it. Brother, sometimes the best ideas are the simplest ones. Starting small might even be better to test what really works. And that's how the Music and Memory Group was born. Every Saturday morning, Michael's house became a meeting point for families dealing with Alzheimer's. Dorothy organized the musical activities. Michael facilitated conversations among family members. Mrs. Margaret, on her good days, participated actively, singing and interacting with visitors. Emily, Dorothy's daughter, also began to participate. She had graduated as a nursing technician and brought medical knowledge that complemented her mother's work. "Mother, look how interesting," she said during one meeting. "Mrs. Marta reacted very well to When the Saints Go Marching In, but Mr. Osvaldo prefers the carnival marches." "That's right, daughter. Each person has their unique musical memories. That's why it's important to have a varied repertoire." The group grew organically. They started with 3 families, and within 6 months, they were 12. Some people came from distant neighborhoods to participate. One of the most regular participants was Mr. Anthony, an 80-year-old gentleman who cared for his wife alone. "Dorothy, I don't know what we'd do without these meetings," he said one day. "During the week when Marlene gets very confused, I sing the songs I learned here with you. It always works." "Mr. Anthony, you have a beautiful voice. Why don't you sing a song for the group today?" "Oh, Dorothy, I'm embarrassed." "No need to be. Here we're all family." Mr. Anthony sang Moon River with a trembling voice but full of emotion. Mrs. Marlene, who rarely spoke, began to hum along. There wasn't a single person in the group who wasn't moved. After the meeting, Michael spoke with Dorothy about the impact they were making. "Dorothy, do you see the difference we're making in these people's lives?" "I do, Mr. Michael, but do you know what moves me the most?" "What?" "Seeing how Mrs. Margaret interacts with the others. She might not always remember who we are, but when there are people singing around her, she feels useful. She feels part of something bigger." It was true. Mrs. Margaret had become a sort of matriarch of the group. Even on the days when she was more confused, her presence brought comfort to the other participants. Mrs. Evelyn, the elegant lady they met at the seminar, had become one of the group's informal organizers. "Michael, Dorothy, you saved my life," she said at one of the meetings. "Before I met you, I was locked away at home with my husband, not knowing what to do, feeling like the loneliest person in the world. And now, Mrs. Evelyn, now I know I'm not alone, that there are other people going through the same situation, and most importantly, I know I can do something to help my husband have happy moments." 1 year after the group started, Michael received an unexpected proposal. A television channel wanted to do a story on the work they were doing. "Dorothy, what do you think? It could be an opportunity to help even more people." "Mr. Michael, I'm afraid television might turn this into a spectacle. What we do here is intimate, personal." Michael understood the concern, but after speaking with the producer, he decided to accept with a few conditions. The story would be discreet, focused on the importance of compassionate care without exploiting the suffering of the families. The filming was done during one of the group's meetings. The journalist was visibly moved by what he witnessed. "In 30 years in this profession, I've rarely seen anything as genuine as this," he said to Michael. You've created a real support community." The story had a surprising impact. Michael received hundreds of calls in the following days. Families asking for help, professionals offering support, even business people interested in funding the expansion of the project. One of the most important calls came from the State Department of Health. "Mr. Michael, we would like to learn more about your work. We are studying the possibility of implementing similar programs in the public system." Michael was thrilled. The idea that Dorothy's work could reach families who didn't have the means for private treatments moved him deeply. Dorothy, on the other hand, was worried. "Mr. Michael, what if we can't maintain the quality of the work when it gets too big?" "What do you mean?" "What works here is the individual affection, the personal attention. If it becomes too institutional, it might lose its essence." Michael reflected on that. Dorothy was right. It was important to grow, but without losing the humanity of the work. "Dorothy, what if we start by training other people to replicate our model? You could teach your methods to other caregivers." "I would like to do that. Teach others to care with love." And that's how the training project was born. Dorothy began giving courses for caregivers, nurses and family members interested in learning her techniques. The first course had 20 participants. Dorothy was nervous at first, but when she started talking about her experience, the shyness disappeared. "Everyone, I'm going to teach you what I learned in practice. I'm not an academic. I don't have a degree in music therapy, but I know what works because I've lived it up close." The participants were fascinated by Dorothy's practical approach. She didn't just teach the musical techniques, but she conveyed the philosophy of compassionate care. Emily, who had just finished nursing school, began helping with the classes, bringing a technical perspective that complemented her mother's intuitive knowledge. "Mom, you should write a book about your experiences," she suggested one day. "Oh, honey, I don't know how to write a book. I barely finished high school." "Mom, Mr. Michael could help. You could write it together." The book idea planted a seed. Michael began documenting all the conversations and experiences they had shared. Dorothy told the stories, he organized the information. "Dorothy, you have incredible stories to share. Every family that comes through here has a lesson to teach. Mr. Michael, do you know which story I wish more people knew?" "Which one?" "Mrs. Margaret's. When you found me singing to her, you could have fired me. You could have thought I was being inappropriate. But you chose to embrace the idea, you chose to participate. That changed all of our lives." As they worked on the book, Michael realized how his own worldview had transformed. 2 years earlier, he was a businessman focused only on profits and goals. Now his greatest achievement was seeing his mother's smile or the relief on a family's face as they found hope. "Dorothy, can I make a confession?" "Of course, Mr. Michael." "These last 2 years have been the best of my life. Even with all the difficulties of Mum's illness, I've never felt so useful, so connected to what really matters. You know why, don't you?" "Why?" "Because you discovered that happiness isn't about having more, but about giving more, about being present, about caring, about creating real connections." At that moment, Mrs. Margaret entered the room where they were talking. She was wearing her favorite pink robe and smiling. "Are you talking about me?" she asked, with a clarity that had become more rare. "We were talking about how special you are, Mrs. Margaret," replied Dorothy. "I know I'm special," she said, sitting down between them. "I have a family that sings with me." Michael held his mother's hand. Dorothy began to hum softly, and there, in that simple moment, they were exactly where they needed to be. 2 months later, Michael faced the day he knew would come, but for which he would never be prepared. Margaret woke up more confused than usual, and throughout the day lost even more connection with reality. The doctor was called and explained it was a natural part of the disease's progression. There would be increasingly more difficult days and fewer moments of clarity. "Mr. Michael," Dorothy said that night, "Mrs. Margaret is teaching us about saying goodbye. Every moment she still recognizes us is a gift. How can you face this with such serenity?" "Because I've learned that love doesn't need memory to exist. Even when she doesn't remember our names, she still feels the affection. That's why we keep singing, even when it seems she isn't listening." In the following months, Mrs. Margaret had more absent days than present ones, but the music and memory group continued to meet at the house, and she, even in her most distant moments, seemed to respond to the musical energy around her. Mr. Anthony brought a profound reflection to one of the meetings. Folks, caring for someone with Alzheimer's is like watering a plant that won't bloom anymore. You keep watering it, not because you expect a result, but because it's the right thing to do. It's pure love. Mr. Anthony's words touched everyone deeply. Michael realized that this was the essence of what they had created, a space where love could exist without expectations, where caring was an act of pure generosity. The book they wrote together was published 6 months later. Music and Memory, a journey of love and care, became an unexpected success. Proceeds from the sale were allocated to create a fund that offered free support for families in need. Dorothy was surprised by the publication's impact. "Mr. Michael, I never imagined our story could interest so many people." "Dorothy, our story touches people because it's real. It's not about miracles or impossible cures. It's about finding beauty and connection, even in the most difficult circumstances." The book's success brought new invitations. Dorothy was asked to speak at medical conferences, universities, and support groups in other cities. Always with Michael by her side, they brought their message of compassionate care wherever they were invited. During a talk in Washington, D.C., a medical student asked a question that stayed with Dorothy. "Mrs. Dorothy, aren't you afraid of getting too attached to the people you care for?" "My dear, I've learned something important. We shouldn't be afraid to get attached. The fear of suffering shouldn't stop us from loving. Caring for people is about being fully present, knowing that one day they will leave us. That's what makes every moment more precious." 3 years after that first day when Michael discovered Dorothy singing to his mother, Mrs. Margaret passed away peacefully on a Saturday afternoon while the group gathered in the next room. Her final hours were soothed by the voices that had filled her last years with so much affection. Michael was devastated, but Dorothy helped him process the pain. "Mr. Michael, Mrs. Margaret gave us a gift before she left." "What gift?" "She taught us that caring for people isn't about preventing their suffering or their passing. It's about making them feel loved while they are with us." Mrs. Margaret's funeral was unlike any ceremony Michael had ever attended. Instead of formal speeches, there was music. Dorothy, Emily, Mr. Anthony, Mrs. Evelyn, and all the group members sang her favorite songs. "She would have liked this," said Robert, who came from Washington, D.C. to say goodbye to his mother. Music and love, that's all she wanted in her final years. After the mourning period, Michael faced a difficult decision. He didn't know if he had the strength to continue the group without his mother's presence. It was Dorothy who encouraged him. "Mr. Michael, Mrs. Margaret planted a seed. If we stop now, the seed won't be able to grow and bear fruit. But will I be able to keep seeing other families go through what I went through?" "Yes, you will. And do you know why? Because now you know it's possible to find moments of joy even in the midst of sadness. That's what we can offer other families." Michael decided to continue. The Music and Memory group not only continued but grew. The house was adapted to welcome more families, and Dorothy trained a team of specialized caregivers. Emily finished her geriatric specialization and became the project's technical coordinator. Tommy, Dorothy's nephew, now 15, helped with musical activities using his guitar. "Aunt Dot," he said one day, "when I grow up, I want to do the same work you do." "And what is the work that I do, Tommy?" "You help people remember that they are loved." The boy's answer moved Dorothy. That was exactly it. Her work was about love, about human connection, about creating moments of dignity and joy for people in their most vulnerable stages. 5 years after that first meeting, Michael and Dorothy finally managed to build the care center they had dreamed of. The Margaret's Music and Memory Center became a national reference for compassionate care for people with Alzheimer's. Dorothy was the director of care, but she still made a point of singing personally with some residents every day. "Mr. Michael," she said one afternoon, while they observed the activities in the center's garden, "do you remember when you first found me singing for Mrs. Margaret? How could I forget? It was the day that changed our lives. Back then I sang by instinct, because I saw it did her good. I never imagined it would become all this." Michael looked around. In the garden, dozens of people were singing, talking, interacting. Family members were learning care techniques. Caregivers were being trained in the methods developed by Dorothy. It was a whole universe built around the simple philosophy that everyone deserves to be loved and cared for with dignity. "Dorothy, do you know what impresses me the most about all this?" "What, Mr. Michael?" "You never lost your essence. Even with all the growth, with all the recognition, you still sing with the same tenderness as always." "It's because I learned one thing, Mr. Michael. No matter how many people I can help, each one of them needs to feel that they are unique, that they are special. That's why I sing for each person as if it were the first and last time." That night, Michael returned home and found a letter that had arrived in the mail. It was from a lady from the countryside of Pennsylvania. "Mr. Michael and Mrs. Dorothy, my name is Mary Sorensen. I read your book and watched the lectures online. My husband has had Alzheimer's for 2 years, and I felt completely lost. I started singing for him using the techniques you taught, and for the first time in months he smiled. I wanted you to know that you saved our family. Thank you for teaching us that love is the best medicine." Michael showed the letter to Dorothy the next day. "Dorothy, we've reached where we wanted to go." "Where, Mr. Michael?" "Into people's hearts. We are helping families we've never met, in places we've never visited. Mrs. Margaret would be proud." "I'm sure she would. And do you know what she would say?" "What?" "Keep singing. Always keep singing." End of story. Now tell us, what did you think of this touching story? Do you believe that love and music can truly transform lives like it did for Mrs. Margaret? Share with us your opinion and your own experiences with elderly family members. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.